Sech the Makos, Daf Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. We're starting from Tez Zayin Amud Beis, 3 lines from the bottom of Rav Yosef. Yesterday we learned that Rav said that somebody who had eaten tevel of Maisa Ani, meaning that he didn't remove the Maisa Ani from the crop, then it has a din like tevel. And the Gemara asked for the Makeh, and the Gemara gave the Makeh for Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef learned it out from Exedah Shava. It says, V'achol b'sharach v'soveu, that they should eat in the cities, which is there. It's referring to Maisa Ani, and it also says the word Misharacha by Leischalach Misharacha by Maisa the Gank V'Serish. So there's just like the Sharacha, the Achlish Misharacha is referring to Maisa Ani, so too the Leisuchal is referring to Maisa Ani. So the Gemara, we're going to start now. Amar Rabbi Yosef Kitanoi. Rabbi Yosef said there's Tanoim that argue on Rabbi Yosef, and Rabbi Yossi in this din. Benegay that if it's considered as tevel, if you don't remove the Maisani. Rabbi Lezer says Benegay to Dmai. We learned in the Mishnah Masechta Saita that Yechon Kayin Gadol sent throughout the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael that since he said seen that there are many Amaratzim who are chashud not to take off mices from the peiris, except for Truma Gedela, which they were careful. So therefore, he was masakin that anybody who buys tvur from Amaretz has to take off mices. Of course, the Truma they didn't have to be concerned about. They knew about it. They knew the severity of it. So Truma they would take off, but Maisa, which is not written in the Peiris Natera, they weren't so careful. Therefore, the Yechon Kain Gadol instituted that every person who buys from Amaratzim would have to take off Maisa. So now, Zog Gemara ben the gate to the Mai, which is talking about buying tvur from Amaretz, which is not known if he took off Maisas, which the Chacham were mesaking to take off Maisa myself. He says when it comes to Maisa Ani, buying the Mai from buying tvur from Amaretz, where you don't know if he took off Maisa, says but the gate to the Maisa Ani that the tvur that you bought, when the gate to the Maisa Ani, you don't have to be mafresh misafik, and you don't even have to designate and say, oh, this is Maisa Ani, the peiris in the north or in the south of this pile. Chachamim say, Hashem, he has to call out that and say that this side of the pile and the north or the south part of the peiris, that is Maisa Ani, and it's a laftish. But he doesn't actually have to separate it, because he doesn't really have to give it to the Ani. Why doesn't he have to give it to the Ani? Because it's a suffix if the Ani was already given from this pile. And if it's a suffix, then the Ani would have to be proved that he did. So therefore, he doesn't even have to give it, and he doesn't have to physically separate it. My lab, is it or not? This is what Rabbi Lazar and Chacham are arguing: whether you have to be Kodesh Hashem, designate and say bedibur a certain part of the peiris is going to be Maisa Ani or not. Rabbi Lezer says you don't have to. The Chacham hold that you have to, because Vadei Tevle. They say Maisa Ani, where there's a Chiyuv Vadei, not a suffix, where there's a Chiyuv Vadei take off Maisa Ani. They hold that if you don't take it off, the peiris will be Tevel, if you don't separate it. As it didn't mamish like Tevel, it's forbidden to eat. Therefore, he says you have to, when it's a suffix, you have to be Kodesh Hashem. But Rabbi Lezer holds Vadei in a Tevle. If it's a Vadai, meaning even when it's when you have to take off Maisa Ani, it's no suffix that Maisa Ani was not removed. Nevertheless, he says it's mutabachila. It's not going to be tevel. It's just a mitzvah to take off Maisa Ani and give it to the Aniyim. And therefore, if it's a suffix, if he took off Maisa Ani, you don't even have to say anything. Why do you have to speak about the machlik? Why do you have to say the machlik? When are talking about where he bought tvur from Amaretz, where there's a suffix. There's a suffix if there was Maisa Ani to be removed from there or not. Say the same machlik is if it's going to be considered as tevel or not. Bevadai. say that we're talking about a regular person who didn't remove Maisani, but he removed the Tuma Maisarishan, let's say. So in such a case, well, let us say if he didn't remove Maisani, there's a machlekes. The Chacham said it's tavel, you're not allowed to eat it, and Abelazar says you could because it's not choshev, it's not something that's kodesh. It's not significant enough to say if it wasn't removed, it has a din of tavel. That doesn't have any kedusha. So the Kuli Alma only we're gonna have to say when it's a vadai. And when we're talking about a vadai of that he didn't remove the Maisani, we'll have a din of tavel. And over here, in Benegate, the Maisani of the Maya is what they're arguing about. Rabbi Lezer holds, listen, Amaratz are not choshud. Benegate the Maisani of the Maya. They're only why keeping the Mainahu afrish mafresh. Since Maisani is only a monetary thing, and there's no Isra of Achilam, even Amaretz would be mafresh in order to remove the tavel from the peiros. Because there's no big deal. Mashenk by the other maises like maiserishin. So these are maises that make it osabachila because maiserishin there's the union of tumas maises which is forbidden to a zar and they would have to give it after takayin, so they won't even bother with it. And so to maisesheni, they won't even bother with it separating it because it becomes a yisin achila outside Yerushalayim. You have to bring it up to Yerushalayim. So and by Maisani, he's not there. There's no concern. So therefore, since there's no concern about Maisani, therefore he says, even by Amaretz, therefore he says there's no need even to be Kodesh Hashem. But Rabbanan say no, it has nothing to do with a concern of Isa or not. Keeping the Tichalei Milsel Loy Mafresh. He says since there's a bother, a badanish, there's a burden of separating, and he's lazy, he won't even be mafresh the Maisani. And since they're chashud, even a Maisani, therefore they have to be Kodesh Hashem. Zog the Gemara, Kama Yuchman HaTevel, in the Mishnah we learned, how much does he have to eat from Tevel in order to be Chayiv Malchus? So Rabbi Shimon says Kol Shul, even a drop, any amount. Chacham say Kazais. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, Machlekes, the Machlekes Rabbi Shimon Chacham Bechita is talking about by a kernel of wheat. So by a kernel of wheat. So the Rabbi Shimon says even the Kol Shul because it's in its original form how it was created. And Chacham say Kazais. Aval Bekemach, but what's if it's flour? So and it's not in its original form. The Behakuk Kazais. Everybody will hold. It's the shears of Kazais, even according to Rabbi Shimon. So the Gemara Rabbi Yirmiyah, Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, ki machlokes bazu, kach machlokes bazu. He says just like the machlokes you have by flour, according to Rabbi Shimon. I'm sorry, just like the machlokes you have by chita, by chita, you have the same machlokes also by kemach. That even Rabbi Shimon will hold that even the kosher is going to be enough, and it's not because of beriat. Nan. So, in fact, the Gemara on Rabbi Yirmiyah, because Rabbi Yirmiyah said the name of Rish Lakish, that by Kemach, that according to Rabbi Shimon, in all these Surim, you're going to be Chayv Malchus Bekolshu, except by when you come to a carbon. Now, we learned the Mishnah, so in fact, the Gemara Hakasha on the words of Rabbi Yirmiyah that says, Rabbi Shimon says, even by Kemach, we learned the Mishnah of Rabbi Shimon, aren't you made it to me when you eat an ant? Even if it's a kolshu, if it's a drop, it's any shear, that he's going to be chayiv, even much less than a kazais. I'm a loyim at pnei shikri yasa. So the Chacham said to him, because it's in its original form as it was created. I'm a lamb. So Rabbi Shimon said back to them, Avchita achas kivri yasa, even one kernel of wheat is like its original form. And when you want to chita in, so it's mashma, so we can imply, not emphit, we can imply, if Rabbi Shimon says, dafka chita in, only on chita you're going to be chayiv b'kolshu in any amount because it's in the original form of a kemach loy. So you see, even Rabbi Shimon holds by flour you're not going to get malchus because it's not in its original form, and they only need a kazayis. And you want there Rabbi Shimon that says the reason why chita is kibi yasel devreim kamlo. He was only saying according to the sheet of the chachamim, but l'dedi afilu kemach nami. But Rabbi Shimon says, but according to my own shita, I hold by that you get malchus even by kemach b'kolshu. Only according to you. He was saying according to you chacham that you say you need a kazais. At least be made the chita achas when somebody eats a kernel, a full kernel of wheat. Shehikiri Yas, it's exactly in its original form as it was created. And just like by eating an ant, you say it's Bekolshu, the Chacham made but it's Bekolshu. So too, by Chita, it's in its original form, just like an ant, so it should be even Bekolshu. So, in fact, what are the Rabbanim going to answer? It's Taka good to show why aren't they made by a kernel of wheat that should be Bekolshu? And for the Gemara, the Chacham hold Bris Neshama. It has to be in its original form with life. That there's Ruach Chaim, there's a Neshama in it. Chashuv, that's significant and enough that it's even Bekolshu. But Chita, which there's no life in it, like Chashuv, it's not significant enough. Bekolshu has to be Kazayas. Tanika said Rabbi Yimei. We learned in the Braisa, like the words of Rabbi Yimei. Rabbi Shimon Heimer, Rabbi Shimon says, Kolshu Lamakis. Any, even the Kolshu is going to be Chayv Malchus. Even if he ate a Kolshu, he's going to be Chayv Malchus. Well, Kazayas, the whole share of Kazayas is El Linya Carbon. There's only been a gay that somebody who eats b'shoigig, something that's also that if he did it basically would have been chayiv kares. So there on eating the carbon chat on eating b'shoigig is going to be chayiv carbon chatas. There it's talking about what kind of a shoigig that is going to be mechayiv warrant him carbon chatas if he ate a kazayas. But when the gay malchus, the Torah did not give a shear. Somebody who eats the first from the first fruits that from the seven fruits that Eretz Yisrael was praised with, and he eats it before he reads the Pashas Habikurim, or Kach Kedashim Chutz Laklayim, or he eats Kach Kedashim outside the curtains, outside the Azara, or he eats Kach Mekalim Ma'aser Sheni Chutz Lachayma, or he eats Kach Mekalim and Ma'aser Sheni outside the walls of Yerushalayim before redeeming it. Somebody who breaks the bone of a carbon pesach, which is kosher, he gets 40 lashes. Because in the Torah it says he's on the lava, had some lois ishbru bay. But somebody who leaves open the carbon of pesach of Torah, which is a kosher carbon pesach till the morning, somebody who breaks the bone of the tamei of a carbon pesach, which is tamei, ain't no like abayim, doesn't get 40 lashes by leaving over from a carbon till the morning. Is a lava nitla say, and since the lava it says baish the sefer if it's left over in the morning, so that's how he uproots the lava, and he's not chayv malchus. Somebody who breaks the bone of Tamid Carbon Pesach, he's not chayv because it says but etzem le'sishru bay. The word bay teaches us that this lav was only said bay on a carbon kosher. Somebody who takes the mother bird together with the babies, with the fledglings. Rabbi Yehuda says he gets a malchus because of the Yisrael Sikach ha'im al and if he did take it, he cannot put it back. And he cannot put it back. And the Gemara will explain it's not considered as a lav shenitin lasei. Learn it as if it's a lav shenitin lasei, and therefore he doesn't get malchus. Rabbi Yehuda learns it that when it says shalach to shalach, if the loisikach, the kavanah is not to be. He says. The kavanah is not to be that you should send it if you took it. No, the kavanah is don't take the mother with the children. Only send away the mother. That's how it's learned. It's not written as a say. The say is going to be a tikkun to the lois say, meaning that if you took it, then you put it back and you send it away. Well, the chacham do learn it as a lav shenitin lasei. Zaklal. Kol mitzvah lois hasei sheish bekum hasei. Any mitzvah say that has a say as a tikkun to the lav, ein chayam malaha. You're not going to be chayv malchus, and that's what the chacham learned by the mitzvah of shiluch hakan. There, it's the asay is written as a tikkun to the lav. It's a lav shenitin lasei. So the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Bachana, Amar Rabbi Yechon. Rabbi Bachana said, Rabbi Yechon, Zu Divrei Rabbi Akiva stim to'ah. The words of the Mishnah with the gate to Bikurim were said that if you eat the Bikurim before the Pasha Rabbi Bikurim, that you chayim malchus. That stam, it was written in Rabbi Akiva. When it doesn't say a name, it's referring to Rabbi Akiva. And the reason why the Mishnah didn't want to say a name, is to tell you that the halacha is, it should seem like it was a Rabbin who said it, and they should establish the halacha like Rabbi Akiva. But the Chacham argue on it. When they get Habas Bikurim, they say Hanoch Makos Bahem. If he didn't place the Bikurim before the Mizbeach, he's not Yotze even b'diavad. But Kriya Ein Makos Bahem. He says, but if he didn't read the Pasha Bikurim, he's Yotze b'diavad Yidei Chayva of Mitzvah Bikurim. The only thing is the Hanocha. So according to this opinion, he doesn't get Malchus if he ate the Bikurim before. He doesn't. According to this opinion, he doesn't get Malchus only if he eats the Bikurim before placing it before the Mizbeach. But if he ate it before the Bible read the Pashta Bikurim, he doesn't get Malchus. And why? Where did they learn out from that? It's the emphasis is the Hanacha, because if you look, the Rashi brings down in Pashas Bikurim, it says twice the lashon hanacha. It says v'nichai lefnei mizbech Hashem elekecha, and it says v'nachtai lefnei Hashem elekecha. So we have a klal when the Torah repeats the prat twice in the same mitzvah. So this prat is come to tell you it's ma'akiv. If you don't do that prat, it's going to be ma'akiv even with the avid. It's going to hold back from being able to hold back the mitzvah from being able to be performed unless you do the hanacha. The hanacha, because since the Torah says it twice, it's going to be a din ikuv in the mitzvah bikurim. In fact, should we say that Rabbi Yechon, let us say that Rabbi Yechon, meaning let Rabbi Yechon say Rabbi Shimon stim to say this stam words in the Mishnah with the to eating the kurim without before the pasta bikurim should be Rabbi Shimon, because Rabbi Shimon Befeida said it. And you want to hook this is in itself what Rabbi Yechon is coming to teach us. Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Shimon is tvidele, because even Rabbi Akiva will hold like the Shita, who of meaning who was Rabbi Shimon who said befeidish. So instead of mentioning Rabbi Shimon, which his words are befeidish and Rabbi and it's known to everybody, Rabbi Yechon mentioned the stam was Rabbi Akiva to tell us even Rabbi Akiva agrees to Rabbi Shimon's words to give it more strength. Okay, in fact, you want to marry Rabbi Shimon. What's the market to Rabbi Shimon that Rabbi Shimon holds this way? So you want to Tanya learn from Rabbi Isa. It's written in the pasuk like Suchal Lechal B'Sharacha, Mais the Gank of Sereish V'Tzaracha, Uvecheres B'Karcha V'Tzeinacha, V'Chol Derecha, Asher Tidev, and the Deisecha Trumas Yodecha. So the way Rabbi Shimon is going to dash, and he's going to start from the end, from the reverse, the opposite, from the end of the pasuk and going backwards. Amar Rabbi Shimon, Ma Bazel Hamdeno. Which of Achilas B'Kurim is the pasuk coming to Asa? Im La'ichlon Chutz L'Chayma. If he's coming to Asa, a type of B'Kurim that of eating outside the walls of Yerushalayim, he says, for that I don't need. I can learn out B'Kavachim Ma'isa Sheni, from B'Kavachim Ma'isa Sheni, which is Kal. Because Bikurim has a din like Truma, which is much more chamor. Umam Ma'isa Kal Madach Ma'isa, which is more lenient. Then Bikurim, Eichel Michutz L'Chayma, like somebody who eats Ma'isa Sheni that wasn't redeemed, you say he gets Malchus. Of course, Bikurim, which is more chamor, like Koshken, for sure we should know that type of Bikurim, if he eats outside the walls of Yerushalayim, he's going to be Chaim Malchus. Rather, the pasuk is come to teach us the reason why the Torah mentions Bikurim is obviously come to tell us that if he ate the Bikurim before reading the Pasuk Bikurim, she will like it that he's going to get Malchus. Then he goes the next word, and that's mentioned in the pasuk Zu Teidul Shlamim, is referring to Kam Teidul Shlamim. So if you want to, then why is the Torah saying the words about Teidul Shlamim? If he's coming to tell us the Isa that you're not allowed to eat Teidul Shlamim outside the walls of Yerushalayim, Kavachim Ma'isa Sheni, which is much lighter than Teidul Shlamim. Rather, why did the Mishnah mention? Why did the pasuk mention the Inyan of Teidul Shlamim? Ella to teach us Teidul Shlamim. If they have somebody who eats the Teidul Shlamim before the spraying of the blood of the carbon, she will like it that he gets Malchus, meaning. If you can't use it for Chilas Teidul Shlamim for Chutz L'Chayma, then you have to give it. Then you apply it to the inyan of eating it before Zerika, that you'll be Chayv Malchus. And by the way, the Torah only mentions that it's Asay. If you look, Rashi brings down by Chutz L'Chayma we already know that, and the Torah only asks us. It says in the pasuk in the Torah, and only afterwards it says So the pasuk, our pasuk, is only to tell you there's a Isa Hazei, but not about a Isa Lav. It says that you should eat it only after you spray and then only after it says Abasatech. We only know about Asay, but we don't know that if he eats it before the Zikah, that he's going to be Chayv Malchus. And this is what the Kavachem is coming to teach us, the extra word in the pasuk is coming to teach us, that if he ate it before the Zikah, he's going to be Chayv Malchus. It's like the Gemara by Becheres. Why the Mishnah, what there, Kav Mecheres? We're referring to Kav Mecheres. What is this pasuk coming to? Why does he have to mention about Becheres? What type of Becheres is he coming to? What's the Chiddush in Becheres? To tell me that if he eats from the Kav Mecher outside the walls of Yerushalayim, I know that he gets Malchus. Kavachem Ma'aseh Sheni, which is much more lighter. And if it's coming to tell you the Isa of eating it Lefnei Hazika, that you're not allowed to eat the B'sar of Becher before the spraying of the blood, that I can learn now, Kavachem Teidul Shlamim, which is lighter than Becher. And the Gemara will explain. So, Ella, rather, only the pasuk is coming to tell you, somebody who eats, meaning, Kahanim who eat after the Zika, Shulaika, that if it's, that if it's a Zar that eats it, even after the Zika, that he will be Chai Malchus, because we only know about an Asay. If you look in the pasuk, it says only Asay by Azar eating from the Becher. What does it say? Ach Becher Shor, I Becher Kasel I Becher Eis. It says B'sarim Yilach. So this pasuk tells you the B'sar has to be Dafke Lach to the Kahanim. But Azar who eats it is Eival Asay, but it doesn't say about a lav, a Malchus. And this is what the Kavachem over here, this person is coming to teach us the reason why he mentions Mechay, to tell you that if a Zoy eats it, even after the Zika, he's still going to be Chai Malchus. So Chatz V'Hashem is referring to Kochi Kochim. Chatz V'Hashem. Amar Rabbi Shimon, Ma Bozelam. Then what is the pasuk coming to teach us with a Chatz and Hashem? If he's coming to teach us about eating outside the wall, that he's going to be Chayv Malchus, I can learn out from Maisa, which is Maisa Sheni, which is much more lenient that you Chayv Malchus for it. And if he's coming to teach you that he's Chayv before spraying the blood Malchus, you can learn out from Teidul Shlam, which is Kachim Kalman versus here it's Kachim Kachim. And if it's coming to teach us Lachazika, that if he if a Zar eats it after the Zika Chatas or Shlamim, so that you don't need either, because of Kavachem V'Cher. We can learn out from a Kavachem V'Cher that if a Zar eats a V'Cher, which is much more lenient, that he gets Malchus. A Zar who eats from the Sar Chatas or Ashem, which is more Chama, of course he's going to get Malchus. Alei B'Hakasav, Ella, rather the pasuk is coming to teach us, if you can apply to any of these inyanim, rather what is it? Somebody who eats from the chatas and asham even after the spraying of the blood, chutz l'klaim, outside the azara, shulaika, that he gets malchus, even if he's going to be a kohen. And this is also only asay. It doesn't mention about alois asay. It says in the pasha, b'mekoim kodesh ta'achol. So it's written b'lashon asay. How do we know that he'll be chayiv if he's over and he eats it outside? That he's going to be chayiv malchus. It's not mentioned a lot from this pasuk mitzad hakavachema. The darecha so oila. The darecha is oila. Rabbi Shimon said, "Ma bazel amdano." What kind of achilus oila is the pasuk coming to asa? If he's coming to tell us that you chayiv malchus if you eat outside the walls of Yerushalayim, Kavachem Ma'aseh Sheni. We can learn out from Kavachem Ma'aseh Sheni, which is much more lenient. Lifnei Zika. And if you're coming to tell us that if he ate it before the spraying of the blood, then the Kavachem V'Teidul Shlamim, you can learn out from the Kavachem V'Teidul Shlamim, because the Eila is much more Chama. La'ach Zika. And if you're coming to tell us that if it was after the zikah that Azar who eats it, he's going to be Chaim Malkus, Kavachem V'chei. We can learn out from a Kavachem V'chei, which is more lenient. And if he's coming to teach us the Isser of eating the meat, Chutz L'Kloyim, even after the zikah, even for a koyin who's going to eat it, but if it's out the Azar, outside the Azar, he's going to be Chaim Malkus. Kavachem V'chatzis V'Hashem. You can learn out with a Kavachem V'chatzis V'Hashem who are more lenient than Oila. Allah ba'akasu, rather the pasuk is coming to tell us, Allah l'lamed only teaches al derech inyan no tnei inyan ache. He's coming to teach us the din of ha'ich min ha'ila. Somebody who eats from the oil achasika, even after the spraying of the blood, and even if it's inside the azara, and even if it's a kain, shulek is going to get malchus. But this is only, again, it was only stated as I say. We don't know about malchus. It says, as I say, everything has to go on the mizbeach. So, but it's written derech hasei. But we don't know that if a kohen comes and eats from it, that he's going to be. We only know he'll be over on a mitzvah hasei, but we don't know that he's going to get malchus from this pasuk on the Kavachem. We learn now that he's over from the midah of inay le'inyan. If you can't use it for the inyan that the pasuk is talking about, you use it for a different inyan. That's where he's come to teach us that he's going to be chayiv, even as a kohen eating from the cup moila. But chayiv malchus, because in the pasuk you only see he's going to be over and hasei. Amar Rava said, the Yilidei imei, can Rabbi Shimon tell it? Any mother that will give birth should daven that the vlad should be like Rabbi Shimon. Loy tell it, and if not, it shouldn't have that child. I say, even though there are many, I have kasha on all his drashis, Rav is saying, nevertheless, he's worth praise, and we'll soon see why. And now he's going to slug up each inyan that Rabbi Shimon made a dasha for, and learn that a limud, and say you can't learn it out. He says, "My chumad to bikurim ma'isa." In what is bikurim more chumad of ma'isa that you automatically knew that chutz l'chema by bikurim is going to be aser. Shekein isun lazorim. You want to say because bikurim is forbidden for azar. Ma'isa sheni could be eaten in Yerushalayim to everybody. That's how you want to say it. Bikurim is only for individuals. That's why it's more chamor. Adrabah. When you want to forget, Ma'isa sheni is chamor. Shekein aser la'einan. Einan is not allowed. So somebody who's his immediate relative who passes away that day cannot eat Ma'isa sheni, but bikurim he's allowed to eat. So you see that Ma'isa sheni is more chamor. So how could you? So you can't say I'll learn out with a Kavachem that a chilas bikurim outside the walls is Chai Malchus. Ma'isa sheni is more chamor than bikurim. And weiter, my chumah the tedu shlom in Ma'isa sheni. What's the chumah? You said there's a chumah in the commentator in Shlomim from Ma'isa sheni that we learn out from the Ma'isa Kal that the chutz l'chema for sure is going to be Malchus. Why? Shekein tu'unim matan domin. Because by chumah the tedu Shlomim needs the spraying of the blood, and you have to sacrifice the fats. It's not even brought on the mizbeach. There's none of these inyanim. So that's how you want to explain that Todah Shalom is more chama. Adarabah, Ma'isa Sheni chama. She came to the Kesed Tzura. By Ma'isa Sheni that wasn't redeemed, it could only be redeemed with a Tzura Samadbeya. You need real coins. Mashen King, when it comes to Todah Shalomim, that if there was a mum that was found in it, so there it says you can redeem it with anything. It doesn't have to be a matbeya. So you see, Ma'isa Sheni is more chamer than Tenon Shlomim. So you cannot learn out with a Kavachem Ma'isa Sheni that if you eat it chutz l'chema by Tenon Shlomim, you're going to be automatically Chayv Malchus. Umay chamer l'chema Tenon Shlomim. Weiter. By Bechayr you said it's more chamer than Tenon Shlomim, and from there you'll learn out that lefnei zrika. By Bechayr, you're automatically going to get Malchus. In fact, what was the Chumah that you thought by Bechayr is over Tedu Shlam? Shekein, Kedushasei. By Bechayr, the Kedusha comes on its own. Merachem. It comes out the moment it comes out of the mother's stomach. But by the Tedu Shlamim, it's only when the owners designate these behemoths for a carbon. But Kozman not, it's not automatically Kaddish. Mashenkin Abechayr is. Like you want to add that, but Teilu Shlam Chamurim. Teilu Shlam is more Chamar. She came to him smicha, and the Safim it needs the leaning of the hands and the libation of snufus chasel with the shave and the raising of the breast and the thigh. Mashenkim by Becheir, it doesn't need all these. So, how could you learn out with a kavachema from Teilu Shlamim that there's a law of eating a becheir before the spraying of the blood? Weiter. You said that there's a chumrah of chatas v'asham than becheir that we can learn out from becheir. L'cheira shekain. What do you want to say? The chumrah of chatas v'asham is shekain kachim kilashim kachim, and becheir is kachim kalam, right? Adarabah becheir chamor. Becheir is more chamash. Shekain kedusha say by becheir the kedusha comes right from when it merachim, right when it comes from the mother's stomach. It's automatically holy. Mashenkin the kedushas of chatas and asham is only when the owners designate them. So since in that aspect a becheir is more chamor, so you cannot learn out with a kavachema from becheir that there's a law for a zar who eats chatas asham. And what do you say? That oila is more chamor than chatas asham that we can learn out from chatas asham. What you're going to say? Why is oila more chamor? But you can't call it because the whole thing is burnt on the mizbeach. By chatzah asham, only the fats is burnt on the mizbeach, but the rest of the meat is eaten by the male kahanim, the kahanim schar. But mitzad hasheni, in fact, chatzah asham chamiri. Chatzah asham is more chamor. She came mechaper. Chatzah asham could be mechaper on different avedas. A chatas is mechaper on the aveda b'shegig, which b'meisa he would have been punished kares. Asham is mechaper on somebody who's he has a suffix in the aveda like asham toli, and also other specific avedas. But a oila b'derech klal is an adava. So you have chatzah asham is more. Chatas v'asham is more chamor because it can be mechaper. Mashenkin oila is more of an adava. So how could you can't learn out with a kavachema from chatzah v'asham that there's a law on eating the oila outside the hazar. And an additional and all the other kabbanis that we mentioned, b'cheir, v'teida, and shlamim, are more chamor than oila. The is v'hu shtei achilas. By the other kabbanis, there's the achilas aimurim, which goes for the mizbeach, and then you have the eating of the meat, which is through the kahanim. But by oila is one achila, only the mizbeach. So since all the other kabbanis are more chamor because there's two achilas, so you can't learn out with a kavachema. There's a lav for eating the oila before the zika or the iser of zaris eating that carbon by a oila. That there's going to be malchus by these. Elamai. So now that we shlucked up the whole drasha of Rabbi Shimon, Elamai the Yolida Imei the Rabbi Shimon. So what does it mean that the birth of whichever mother will give birth should be mispalel to have a child like Rabbi Shimon? What's so special if all his words were of Yishlagim? According to the way Rabbi Shimon himself holds that oila is more chamor than chatas v'asham, and they're more chamor than abecheir, and it's more chamor than teilu shlamim, and they themselves are more chamor than ma'aseh sheni. He says, "Misarisle likra v'darashle." He did a genius move by the only way making these drashes is by starting from the end of the pasuk and going backwards, because if he would start with the first one, you wouldn't be able to make these kavachemes. It's only because he started off with nidvei secha with ma'aseh sheni. With bikudim, and he brought a kavachema from ma'aseh sheni and so forth. He went from kal to kavit. That's the only from the easier ones to the harder ones, and to make it keep on making a kavachema from the end of the pasuk to the next one towards the beginning. That's the only way you could have made the kavachemas. The Gemara goes back to the Shita of Rab Shimon. You learned all these punishments of Malchus from our kavachema. Could we learn out the azhara, a warning from a kavachema, a law from a kavachema? Even according to Manda Yama that says you could learn out a punishment from a din, but ain't masinim in adin. But you cannot learn out lav through a kavachema, like we learned in the Gemara before. The Gemara says, when they get to the Gila Arayes, it says if somebody lives with his sister, which is only a sister from the father's side or a sister from the mother's side, and so too somebody who lives with a sister, which is also the mother, the sister from the mother and father's side. So why would we need that? If it's a sister from one side, either from the mother's side or from the father's side, the person who lives with her is chayiv kares for sure. If a kavachema, if it's a sister that's from both sides, for sure you should be chayiv kares. So, since the Torah nevertheless specified a pasuk, it's for a sister that's from both sides. So obviously, we learn out that we cannot learn out a lav through a kavachema. So the kasha is on Reb Shimon. How did he attempt to learn a lav from a kavachema? And for the Gemara, the Surah B'Alma, he only came to tell us about Isa, that these Isurim is applicable. Not that it's a full lav that you get malchus. So even though mikavachem you cannot learn azhara lav gamo, meaning lav that you chayv malchus, but you can learn out al kapanim that there's a Isa. And Shimon is made that the taki don't get malchus on any of these Isurim. In fact, Rabbi Shimon loike chamish. But Rabbi said the Ferish Hazar that ate from ha'olam before the spraying of the blood on the Mizbeach. Outside the walls of Yerushalayim, according to Rabbi Shimon, you get 5 malchus. For eating outside Yerushalayim, that's 1. For eating before the blood was sprayed on the Mizbeach, 2. For eating, Hazar eating, not a kohen. For eating outside the Hazara. For eating a basa ilah, which is cannot be eaten by any person, that's only in the Mizbeach. So you see the makir for these original 4 first Isurim, that their limit was from Makavachema, and it says according to Rabbi Shimon you get the Malchus. So you're not talking about just Isurim, you're talking about Malchus. And the Kavanah of Rabbi was only to say that he has the Isurim, not that he gets Malchus 5 times. He's only coming to tell you how many Isurim he was over with this action, but not that he's going to get punished with Malchus. In fact, the Gemara B'Hanan Tanam, we learned now Mishnah in the beginning of the Perek Eila Loikin. These, and our Mishnah included somebody who eats Bikurim before reading the Pashta Bikurim, and so too somebody eats Kachim outside the Azara. So you see, befinish there is the Einish of Malchus on these Avedas, and these Isurim are learned in the Braisa from Im Einei Inyam and also through a Kavachema. So how could you say that it's only referring to Isurim? And the Gemara Ella, the Kavanah of Rabbi Shimon is that when it says Loisach Alecha B'Sharecha, and he details all the Isurim of eating outside Yerushalayim, Kra Yisero is really an extra pasuk, and that's why we dash in the additional Isurim, because it was a Yitur. Mechti, let's look. Ksiv, it says in the pasuk, I'm reading the whole pasuk. So it says already the chiyuv that there has to be eaten in Yerushalayim, the oil shlam and ma'aseh sheni bikurim, and the kabbanis neder nadava and b'chayr. So when the pasuk is coming to add the lav on the Isa say on all these things, eating outside Yerushalayim, lichter achmanu, let the Torah just write, lo yisach lo eichlam b'sharecha. And that we'll understand that the kavanah is to all the details that he mentioned before in Pasuk Vav. The Zion is the Pasuk lo eichlam b'sharecha, which is in Pasuk Zion, is referring to all the details that were mentioned in Pasuk Vav. So, why did the Torah have to go back and write all the details in Pasuk Yud Zayin? It says, you have to say, to be meyachad, a special lav that you're over on each one of them if you ate it outside the Yerushalayim, and an additional lav for each one. Or whether it's Bikurim, to tell you about eating before Pashas Bikurim, Each one is coming to tell you an additional law. Mitzad the Yitur is coming to tell you an additional issa for each inyan. L'mashal, we'll start off with. We don't need for Chutz L'Yishalayim because that already the pasuk says. So why did he mention all these other? Why did he mention all of them again? To tell you that you're not allowed to eat before by Bikurim before reading the pasuk of Bikurim, and somebody who's able on that, he's going to get Malchus, and so forth with all the other Yisraelim.